Well, hello, folks. Glad to be back. Sean Spruce, aka Dr. Percap, and I have a special guest with me today, Mr. Zane Wachacha. Zane, tell me a little about yourself.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me on. My name is Zane Wachacha, as Sean said before. I am currently a data coordinator in the Performance Improvement Department at the Cherokee Indian Hospital in Cherokee, North Carolina. I graduated from Robbinsville High School in 2015, and I just graduated in 2019 from Warren Wilson College with a bachelor's in history and political science. And yeah, that's basically it right now.
Well, congratulations. So you're from Snowbird community, right?
Yes, sir.
Great, great. So the reason, Zane, you're on the show today is we want to talk about video games. And, video games have just become this huge, huge force in American pop culture. In fact, the video game industry is now larger than the motion picture and the music industry combined. It's huge. There's just so much going on with regard to games, and they've evolved so much. So tell me a little bit about your background with video games, what got you started in video games, and what you like about them.
Okay, from the start, I'll say I'm Team Xbox over PlayStation. Had to make that
noted.
But, I got started at, I'd say, elementary school. I got big into video games. Still this day, I play games such as Modern Warfare, NBA Live, NBA 2K, and Madden, just sports games, because I love sports and I just love to keep up to date and still connect with my friends while still doing something we both enjoy.
So who are some of the people that you play video games with, that you game with?
College friends, high school friends, even adult coworkers. We just all have a game, and you don't even have to have that game itself. You just be connected as through a group and say, I can be playing a certain game and they can be playing a different game. We'll still be talking and still be communicating through those games. But yeah, which is a way to connect to each other through those games.
Okay. So for folks that aren't too up to speed on modern gaming technology, the days of, going into an arcade and dropping a few quarters into a machine and you're in this singular game and it's just you. Now anybody can play a game with somebody from around the world, right? You get online and there's communities of gamers and people play the same game simultaneously. They can chat with each other. You can communicate. It's just a whole new way of interacting with other people, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So, for somebody that's not familiar with video games, and I think there's some kind of stereotypes, right? Like this kind of classic image of, oh, it's this guy, he sits on his couch all day and he plays video games and he doesn't have a job and he's not very productive. He just hangs out all the time. And there's some negative stigma that's associated with video games. So could you kind of clear the air and explain to folks that might not be as familiar with video games, what is it that makes video games so much fun? And is that true? Are video games really just kind of the resting spot for people that just want to slack and not hang out? Or is that just completely false and not true?
I think in everything you have your certain groups of people, but no, I don't think that's correct. I, for instance, have a job. I love to work out, but I still play video games when I get home. I make a little time for it. Like I said, it's just a way to communicate with your friends and stay up to date while doing something you enjoy. But I think the stigma around it is very incorrect. Yeah, there are certain people that do live life like that, but that's with anything. But I don't agree with it. I think for me, video games is just a way to see my friends and talk to them online while still doing something we enjoy, but still having a life outside of the video game and not letting that video game control me or my friends itself.
Now, you can play video games with people in other countries and other states, but you can also play video games with people within your own community. Now, there is a whole scene, a whole portion of the EBCI community that plays video games, and you folks connect through that medium, right?
Yeah, that's correct, sir.
So what are kind of some of the trends? What are some of the hot games amongst EBCI tribal members? And could you give me maybe just kind of a profile of what a typical person on the Koala Boundary that games, the age range and kind of what their interests are?
Okay. As most reservations, I guess it's a stigma, but as a true stigma, most reservations love the sport of basketball or any sports related stuff. So every year, I think October is around the 1st of October, the NBA 2K game releases. And you can see a bunch of enrolled members always buying that game first itself, installing it on the console and just playing those games. And like my little brother who is 14, he plays that game. And then I have coworkers who's up to 40, 50 years old still play that same game. So it's a very wide age range and age gap that connects everybody through a certain game.
You know, I'm older. I'm already in my 50s, and I grew up when video games were first just kind of taken off. And I remember when I got an Atari one year for Christmas, and it was one of the old school Ataris, one of the early generation ones, and it was a pretty basic game. But boy, I'll tell you, it was exciting at that time, and I just about burned the Space Invaders scoreboard on the pixels of that old tube television that we used to have when I was a kid, because I just played that game. I mean, just pretty much every spare chance I had. So we're talking about modern gaming, though, and sports games, and there's kind of shooter games, adventure games, and things like that. And obviously, basketball's really popular there with young people and older people as well, video game people on the boundary. Do you have any specific EBCI video game tournaments or any kind of competitions just for local folks?
Not that I know of. I've never done one, but there are certain events through gaming, gaming consoles itself. Like for instance, football, you can get a group of people together and just play a tournament. But as far as EBCI, there's nothing like that out there yet.
Okay. So one interesting development with modern video games is there's actually an opportunity where people can make a lot of money playing video games, right? Could you explain a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so I am not one of these people. I love games itself, but I'm not that good. A couple of nights ago, I played against a guy who was probably one of the best in the world on NBA 2K. And it's safe to say he destroyed me pretty handily in this game. But yeah, he is very known. But there are certain tournaments that you got to get invited to through your gaming console score itself. And you got to be very prestigious, got to put a lot of hours in, a lot of work. It's kind of like a job. Well, it is a job. And you got to really hone your craft and become the best you can at that video game itself, whatever it may be.
So this guy is one of the best in the world at this game. Is he? Do you know where he lives, or do you know much about him outside of the game?
No, I didn't, but I recognized his his gamer tag, and in the Xbox, the gamer tag is what you'll go by. How you typically don't want to put your name or where you live because due to security reasons, but it's how people know you by. So it's like a profile name, but I saw his name and recognized it from somewhere. I looked it up on my phone. And sure enough, 2 years ago, he was on a 2K tournament itself with the best players in the world for money.
And there can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes even millions of dollars at stake for a world-class video game player, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, I think about basketball. This is a good analogy because I think of what it would take for a young person to make it to the NBA. I think of the amount of time they're going to have to practice, the games they're going to have to play. Most of these guys have started playing basketball, or women in the WNBA for that matter. And these people have started playing basketball from the time they can just about walk, and they play all the way through grade school, AAU, high school. They go on to college. They devote their life to the sport of basketball. Is it comparable? Is it fair to say that somebody like this gentleman you're talking about has probably put in a similar amount of effort to get to where he's at with a video game?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, you don't just get to that point overnight. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of late nights. But with that, you have to be sure it's not controlling your life itself. Because, like you said, these players do win money. And if that is your job in life and your career in life, then kudos to you. But like I said, for instance, the NBA analogy, there are very few seldom people that are good enough or even great enough to make it to the NBA. And just like that guy I played against, I don't see myself ever getting to that point as much as I put in the hours, but it is possible. It is possible.
Would you consider yourself one of the premier video game players amongst the EBCI? Are there other people that are really, really good or better than you? Or do you where do you rank, Zane? I'm just kind of curious.
So I took a real gap of playing online when I was in college. I just played against like my college buddies and college teammates, and didn't really play against like worldwide or community wide. But I'd say in the past year and a half, I have gotten a whole lot better. I don't want to say premier, but I'd say up and coming. Yeah.
Now, one thing that I think is really interesting about video games, and it's, we're currently in the midst of this big pandemic and the virus and everything. And, when the lockdown started last spring, people like me who do training and work in a lot of communities face to face, we had to completely just pivot and reinvent the way we work and do a lot of this, video conferencing and streaming meetings like we're doing now. And it's interesting because a lot of people in my industry really didn't know much more than just maybe how to use a basic webinar platform or something like this. And it's interesting because the executive director of Sequoia Fund, Russ Siegel, who I partner with to create these shows, he, right away, he was just really proactive and was doing research on, how to create a good setup and what you need to really have good video conferencing capability. And he learned very, very quickly that the video game industry, the video game community, they had it going on. They knew equipment, they knew webcams, they knew headphones and mics. So he just totally, became a student of video game culture and just how to create a really good rig, because you need some equipment, right, to play video games seriously. Can you talk a little bit about what that equipment is and what the costs are to kind of get yourself situated as a gamer?
Okay, well, for sure is a good a Wi-Fi router. You got to have a good Wi-Fi router. If you're living in my past town, Wi-Fi really wasn't that good. So in terms of gameplay, I was always behind, or like I moved behind. And then I moved to a city with better connection, better Wi-Fi, and I saw like a wide variety of difference in how I play and how I operated my player through the game. Besides a Wi-Fi router, you got to have a controller, you got to have your console, and depending on how much you want to spend on a headset, it's up to you. There are headsets that range from $20 to I've seen $200, but it's all preference. But you got to have a good headset to be able to like listen to other players and communicate with other people. But as far as that, I don't think there's anything more unless you want to run a webcam. Where there's like a certain thing called a Twitch account, and that's how people make money, as we discussed earlier. They play certain games and they live stream those games itself and talk about it, talk to their viewers, and that's how they make their money. But that's a good webcam. But I don't have a webcam.
So is it safe to say somebody could get a pretty good setup for less than a few $100s to play video games?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Now there's different ways. I mean, you can go out and buy an Xbox like what you play, or you can get a PlayStation, you can plug that into your TV, or you can play on a PC.
Yep.
Or laptop. What are kind of the pros and cons of different formats or different platforms for playing video games?
It's basically preference. Like my dad, he prefers PlayStation. He says it has better, it's more adult friendly, if I guess that makes sense. But for instance, the controller itself, the controller on the Xbox is a whole lot wider and more fitted to my hands, and his is more like fitted to his. PC, I've never really messed with PC before, but I've watched games played, and I'm just not really that good with my hands, and I'm not that quick as a typer. But it's all preference. It's all what you enjoy doing, and the game's tailored to that console itself.
Gotcha. So there's a lot of parents, and their kids play video games, and some of them aren't really, I think they might not really understand what the fascination is with video games. And I know there's some benefits to video games. I mean, they teach certain types of skills. They teach team building, hand-eye coordination. What are some of the other benefits that a young person can pick up just by playing video games?
Well, for instance, if you're like playing with a group of friends, you stay in a communicative world. So you're always around people, you're always meeting new people. Yeah, you may not see their face, you may not know who they are, but you can learn a lot of knowledge just from me helping you in a certain gameplay and helping you through that certain game itself to become a better player. So I think you're experienced to a lot of good things, but that's basically it. Yeah.
What would you say to an older person who maybe has never played video games, or somebody like myself who, I haven't, like I said, I had an Atari. I remember when PlayStation came out, but it's been years since I really played video games. But somebody wanted to get back into it and learn more about it. What would be a good way to start?
Well, luckily, we are in a world that is like, we call it retroing. So everything that was once old is becoming new again, as in like the way people dress, as in what they wear. So in terms of video games, like I said, there are Ataris out there that are coming back into style. So I think if you want to like relive those days, you can just probably go to a Best Buy or Amazon or any kind of site like that and find your old games and relive those good days.
Asteroids, Missile Command, old school. Yeah, good games. Now, not too long ago, you and some other players from EBCI, you actually teamed up and played against a group of players from another country, didn't you?
Yeah, we played on NBA 2K. Me and four of my buddies played against a team that was from Australia. Our record was, I think, 0-6, and theirs was like 22-4. So you do the math. We didn't have a fun night that night.
So when you're playing a team like that, does each one of you control a specific player on the court? Then is that
Yep.
So? Just like a real game, like you're a guard. This guy's a forward, and you're playing against other teams, and each player on the virtual court is being controlled by an actual person.
Yep.
And in this case, these guys were in Australia. Do you know anything about them? Or I mean, were they like indigenous Australian people, or?
Yeah, they were straight from Australia. Only one of them or two of them had mics. But we really didn't get to. That's what's bad, is you don't really get to communicate with other teams unless you add them to your party and your chat. But yeah, we did know they're from Australia. They were one of the premier teams out there, and yeah, they had a lot of really good players.
So is there any smack talking or anything trash talking like you get on a real basketball court sometimes with a video game?
You have to get them. You have to invite people to your party and say, I'm playing against you right now. If I invited you to my party and I was playing against you, it's up to you if you want to accept that request. But you don't have to. But yeah, there have been some times on, like, it's Modern Warfare, for example, where you can hear everybody, and you get like shot by a different player, you do get smack talked.
Now, an interesting feature with a lot of video games is there's actually like a commerce or a business aspect to it. And there's currency, in-game virtual currency, in which you can buy merchandise in the game. And that virtual currency is actually pegged to real dollars. So you actually have to purchase credits with real money, and then it gives you an opportunity to buy merchandise. And I know, like Fortnite, they have V-Bucks, and those are really, I mean, you can go to Walmart and you can buy a gift card for like $50 worth of V-Bucks. And it just adds a whole new element, but it's also a little bit scary because I was actually contacted earlier this year by a parent in another state and different Native community, but her son, he's like 12 years old. He actually got a hold of her debit card and racked up like $200 worth of charges to buy V-Bucks by playing Fortnite. And when she saw her credit card or her debit card statement, when it came in her bank statement, she saw these charges and didn't understand what they were. And then she asked him about it, and he said, yeah. And he was buying like skins, and like they call them skins, to dress up his character's avatar, and like equipment. And she was just like, what in the world? You actually spent like my heart, like more than 100, like my hard-earned dollars to buy like virtual merchandise in a video game. She just could not really get her hands around that. And obviously it's a concern because, he had her debit card number, and, fortunately it wasn't a huge amount of money, but there have been cases where kids have really spent a lot of money playing video games with in-game currency. Do you have any experience with in-game currency, or kind of how that kind of works?
Yeah. I don't play, I've played Fortnite once or twice, but my games I like are more action related and more sports related, like NBA 2K, football, baseball. But for instance, 2K, as I've reiterated before, they call it VC, not V-Bucks, but it's VC on the game. And you have the ability to upgrade your player in any way, what you wear, how you walk. You can do like backflips in the game, and it helps you in court play. Say, for instance, I'm creating a player. You can build your player any size, any shape, any color you want. And my guy is he's 6'8". I'm not. Hey, I'm 5'7". But so there's a lot of things he's not good at. And if you want to put in the hard-earned time, which takes a lot longer to get to where you want to be in the game, or you can spend $20 of your good hard-earned money, which translate to I think 2,500 VC, and you can upgrade clothes, shoes, um, headphones, but you can also in game like you can also upgrade how you play in the game, like how I dunk it, how I shoot better. So yeah, I do. It is very scary. You do have to like keep an eye on your credit cards if you do have kids, but if that's what you want and you're able to do it, then more power to you.
Okay, that's really fascinating. So, in a sense, you can buy your way, which is a little bit different than actual basketball, because you can buy yourself into becoming a better player just by purchasing merchandise and equipment and things like that. So, what do you say, or what kind of tips do you have to a parent that has a kid that really likes to play video games? What are some things parents should be on the lookout for to make sure that kids have a healthy experience with video games?
Well, for starters, it's all based on what kind of parent you are and how old your kid is. Like as my parents, I didn't get to play the Grand Theft Auto as a kid. I got to play it when I would go to a friend's house, but as far as own the game itself, they would never buy it to me because Grand Theft Auto is a game where it's a fun game now, but just not for kids. It says cuss words. You can see a lot of inappropriate things that kids should not be seeing, and you can shoot and steal anything you want in that game. So probably not fit for a kid. Going from that, I would say talk to your kids about what games they enjoy and the process of still living their life outside of that game, still having a friend, still being active, and don't let that game control you. And knowing that keeping your eye on your debit card, like you said before, so you don't have these end of month reports where you have $200, $400 racked up and you don't even know what's going on. But definitely keeping communication alive with your kid on how the goods and the bads of gaming culture.
Now, you could create passwords and protect a console as well, so a child can't just randomly play at any time or access information as well. Yeah. Okay. So, in some of these games, like you're describing Grand Theft Auto, I mean, that's like a movie. I mean, it has like an R rating, right? Like it's actually against the law, I guess, probably for a minor to play that game unsupervised. Probably like going to a movie, wouldn't it be like going to an R-rated movie?
Yeah, you need to be an adult to purchase the video game.
Okay. So what are some? I mean, talking about sports games, there's shooting games. What are some other really popular video games, especially like because this? I mean, it's like anything else, like movies and music. It's just trends come and go, right? And one game's hot this month and something's hot next. Like right now, what's really hot, especially with Christmas coming up and the holidays?
I would say Fortnite. Fortnite is still one of the most popular games out there. Sports games itself will always be at the top tier. And I think every 2 or 3 years you have Modern Warfare, Call of Duty, and they just released a new shooting game, I think was Modern Warfare. So those are probably the top 5 or top 6 that are in trends right now and in style.
Okay. Are some of those other games popular amongst video game people in Cherokee, or is basketball really the big video game right now?
Basketball, and a bunch of enrolled members love Fortnite. More of the, you don't really see the older generation playing Fortnite as much. More of the, I'd say, under 30 and teens, that culture. But what else? There's baseball. People like the baseball. But with baseball, it's only tailored to the PlayStation console itself. So having the Xbox, I can't play it. I can play it on my dad's PlayStation, but I can't play it on my Xbox. Modern Warfare, you'll see a lot of enrolled members that love the game of Modern Warfare. And Grand Theft Auto will always be popular among the older older generation. So that's probably what's in style, and it just stays like that.
Now, Xbox, PlayStation, they just came out with their latest, greatest consoles, right? I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
Luckily, I was one of the very few that was able to get an Xbox. I was so happy to get it. I'm still trying to get my dad a PlayStation for Christmas, but those sell out instantly. I don't know if it's the supply or just the demand is more wanted than Xbox itself. But the last before this Xbox was 2 years ago, a new Xbox came out, and it's basically just more memory, better facial like screening capabilities, and just more up to date processing.
And what does that new Xbox cost?
I think I paid $500 for mine.
Okay. Now, in order to did you get on a waiting list, or how were you able to? Because I noticed the same thing. Those things just sold out like
Yeah.
right away. How were you able to get yours?
I follow a lot of Twitter links that help me buy these certain video games and like help me get in line. I think it was the third day straight that I bought it from Best Buy online and had to pick it up pre-ordered. But yeah, there was 2 days where I wasn't happy. So yeah, really want it. It's a lot of waiting.
Now they upgrade those systems about what, every 3 or 4 or 5 years? How often do they?
I'd say that's correct. The Xbox was 2 years ago, and the PlayStation was around like anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So there's never really like you can expect it anywhere from 2 to 5 years. I'd say there would be another better system out there.
But even if you invest in the old games, most times you can still play those old games even when you get a new system, right? They're compatible.
Yeah, as long as like I said, I can't play PlayStation, Xbox can't, and PlayStation can't play Xbox. But yeah, you can play old games.
Okay. So has there been any talk about creating like video game tournaments amongst EBCI enrolled members, or there at the community, kind of formalizing a little bit more? Because it sounds like a lot of what's going on, it's really cool. It's community based. It's a lot of interaction, but it seems pretty much informal. So is there any talk about like creating leagues or making it more, just like I said, a little bit more formal, or and not necessarily, maybe that's not a good thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Like I said, it is correct. It's basically informal. You have your group of people, and you just play for 2 to 4 hours, or however long you want to play, or however late it is. But yeah, it's more like informal. It would be cool to have some kind of like formal tournament on the reservation. It'd be cool to play against other tribes. It does seem pretty cool because you have like certain tournaments in person that you do go to these different reservations. You play basketball against them. So I could see eventually down the road the gaming culture just expanding into reservation against reservation or group against group, and just communicating in that sort of sense.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And there is a spectator element to it too, right? I mean, you don't have to play; you can just be an observer. And
Yeah.
I mean, they have sold out arenas in which people just go and watch people play video games, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I think the possibilities are just endless. Now, again, earlier I was talking about the stereotypical gamer, this kind of millennial kid on the couch eating cereal at 10 o'clock at night or whatever. But girls play video games, women play video games as well, right?
Correct.
And are there some women there amongst the EBCI that you guys play with in games, or do you see them playing games? And how are women involved?
Yeah, there are none in our group, but we do know of a couple on the reservation that do play video games. 2K, for example, and the Modern Warfare games. That's the only two that I know of, but they're not as common as men, but there are women that do enjoy video games itself.
Why do you think that is, that women might not play them as much?
Maybe this stigma that at a young age playing video games is just a boy thing, which I don't agree with. I think it's based on how you're raised and what you like. I believe there are a lot of girls that truly do like video games. They just, and I don't want to say afraid, but they don't want to cross that barrier of what will people think of me if I play this certain game, if it doesn't change my outlook,
Uh-huh. That's an interesting point. Now, One thing we haven't talked about yet, we're talking about console games and PC, but there's also, these little games you can play on your phone, like, like Angry Birds and Farmville was really big for a while. And there's simpler games. You play them on your phone, but I think a lot of women play some of those games because I know my older sister, she got really hooked on Farmville a few years ago, and she was playing a lot of Farm. But that was all on a phone, and it wasn't. I don't know, maybe not quite as all encompassing as like a console game, like what you play more of.
Yeah, my mom currently plays mom, dad, sister, and my uncle all play Candy Crush. It's I really understood it, but they play Candy Crush against each other and other people. I think it's like a group of 10. I don't. You can't communicate on it. I think you can't like virtually communicate, but you can like see other people's score. So if I was playing you and you had a score of 3,000 and I wanted to beat it, I'd say, all right, Sean had 3,000. I'm gonna try to beat that score today. But it is a way of communicating and like more things to talk about at work or in life, and just group together and find a certain bond. What connects all of y'all?
Now, do you know anybody that actually designs video games, or does that interest you at all? What does it take to actually become a video game developer?
I don't know anybody that's. I know a couple people that are interested in it, but I don't know anybody that does it itself. I'm not a very good artist, so and I'm not good with technology besides a console or a computer. I just know the basic gist of it. I can't go deeper, but I think there are a bunch of people that are interested in it, but don't know where to go because it's not as common. It's not like around here, these video game consoles creating these certain games. It's not as available where we live.
And I do know that it's not something like, it's a little bit hard. Like a lot of that stuff is self-taught, right? Like coding and things like that. It's not necessarily learned in schools. But I would imagine it's probably a great career if you can get your foot in the door. And
Yeah.
like we mentioned earlier, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's only growing. So I would imagine, for people that develop some of these really hot games like Fortnite and the sports games, Call of Duty, I would imagine, I mean, they're just fabulously wealthy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And they hire a lot of like famous people to voice over characters, and some of the games I've noticed, like actors and things like that.
Yeah, like for instance, I think 2 years ago, uh, he just won Sexiest Man Alive, Michael B. Jordan. He was the main character in NBA 2K as the career mode.
And this is not the Michael Jordan of NBA fame, but the actor, right, from
Yeah,
Black Panther and Creed and all those movies.
that's correct.
Now, are there any games that have any kind of native elements to them? I mean, I remember back in the day that you'd have like some of these like kind of old Wild West games, and maybe it was really stereotypical and not really an accurate portrayal of native people. But I'm just curious, is there any crossover, or any aspects of any kind of native culture that can come up in games?
Not that I know of at this moment. I've not seen any in the games that I play, but I don't play my certain games, but I'm sure somewhere in those line of games there are something that involves native culture itself. But I've not seen it myself.
Okay. So, holidays coming up. Do you have anything on your wish list for Christmas for video games?
See, I literally just bought a new headset last month from Best Buy, but I didn't do the research on it. I didn't read the reviews, and it's got this volume control that only goes so high, and so sometimes I have to like mute my TV or like mute everything around me just to like hear people talk. So probably around video games, a new headset.
What about a parent that maybe a child wants one of the new PlayStations or wants one of the new Xboxes, and they're just completely sold out? Is there any alternative? Is there any way to still get somebody a video game for Christmas, even if you can't get the latest greatest model?
If If they have the previous model, then I would say no, because like I said, everything has, due to the pandemic, everything has transitioned to online shopping. So getting these new PlayStation, getting these new Xbox, there's no more really waiting in line. Even to get your Xbox, your PlayStation, you still have to order and get on the pre-order waiting list just to have a chance at getting it in person and picking it up. But I think if your kid is an understanding kid and knows that you're trying and eventually the time will come that you can get them the games or the headset, everything around it, and then when the time comes and you get the console itself, then it'll all be fit into one. But I don't think there's any alternatives unless they're into some other kind of console, which sucks.
Now the games themselves, they come on disc. Now, do you have to actually buy the disc, or can you download a game online for a PlayStation, or do you actually have to buy that disc and then a physical disc to play the game?
Yeah, PlayStation's newest model just came out with two different variations. I think the digital, which is self-explanatory, is $3.99, and it doesn't take any discs. It's just straight through the Microsoft or not. It's through the page itself, and you only can purchase and download your video games through the web connection. And then the next one is the standard, which is $100 extra, $4.99, and that has the ability to play former discs off the older consoles, and has the ability to download games online itself.
Okay, great. Now earlier we talked about how lucrative video games can be if you're really good at them. And obviously it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. Maybe it's a little bit of a pipe dream. I don't know. But what would you say to a young person, maybe a young teen who just really has a passion for being a video game player and wants to be a professional video game player? How would you approach that? What would be your response?
Just tell them anything is possible. If that is your dreams and your ambitions, then go for it. Because like I said, the stigma around video games being bad, but it also can be good. If it provides money to your family and brings in food to your house, and video games offer that experience. If you're that good and you're able to get to that top tier and that's what you want in life, then go for it. Nothing should hold you back.
Now, it's one thing to be one of these superstar players that makes hundreds of $1,000s a year and plays in these giant tournaments that are streamed all over the world. But what about somebody, okay, maybe they're not a superstar player, but would there be a way to maybe just make a livable wage playing video games? Like maybe you make, $20,000 a year or $30,000 a year. You're not some super rich person, but you actually are able to make somewhat of a living off video games. How is that an option?
Yeah, as far as if you want to go for PC, for example, a bunch of my friends play poker through PC. They're playing against community and worldwide people with real hard-earned money that's being at stake. And I've seen people lose a couple $100s, but I've also seen them win $1,000, a couple $1,000. And if the money is available and that is what you believe in and you're able to do, then there are very alternative ways to win money through gaming consoles.
But that's gambling though, right? I mean, if you're playing poker, that's a little bit different than playing Fortnite or playing NBA.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Okay. All righty. Well, I think we're going to about wrap it up here in the next few minutes. I want to thank you a lot, Zane, for coming on the show and sharing all your knowledge and your insights. And for everybody out there that plays video games or has an interest in video games, it's a really, really exciting, fascinating time to be involved. And like we said earlier, video games are only going to continue to grow in popularity, and they're only going to continue to expand in terms of the types of games and the capability of games. I think ultimately we're going to have games that you're almost like a part of, literally, like virtual reality and things like that. So, Zane, do you have any other thoughts or closing comments you want to share?
The video games are tailored to anybody, any sex, male or female, any race, religion, age verification. If you enjoy video games, don't let nobody tell you that it's not for you. It's bad, but don't let the stigma affect your influences and affect how you think and believe about video games.
All right. We'll leave it at that. Zane, thank you so much. Have a Merry Christmas and good luck at that next NBA tournament you're going to play in.
Thanks, Sean.
Take care. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.